Hi everybody, it's Claire, and this is just going to be a short tutorial specifically on Coliro metallic watercolour paints. Now, I've already done a tutorial on those paints, so basic tips and tricks on how to use them, but having posted this double page from Ivy about a week ago, a lot of you have taken an interest in how to blend with them. So what I'm going to do is, this is my finished pages, and if I just move the sheets, you'll see how beautiful they are when they catch the light. I was going to actually try and take you outside today to do this in the sunshine, but it's not all that sunny today. But we do live in England, so we have to live with it. So you can see how beautiful they are on the paper. They really do catch the light and refract all those mica pigments in the paint. So I'm going to be showing you how to blend two green colours today. So let me just move this out the way, and you can see that I've got my spare copy underneath. Just put my tissue paper back in between those pages. So let me show you the paints first. So you can buy these from Coliro direct in Germany, and you can buy them in, they come in trays of 12, as you can see here, or trays of 6. This is a bespoke palette, because what I did is I got the jute bag for the full 39 colours and bought some empty trays, and therefore I can put these all in the order that I want them to be. So the two colours that we're going to be using today is apple green and moss green. So these two colours here. So the darker is the moss green and the lighter is the apple. Now what I'm going to do is, so I've got my 3-0 modelling paintbrush. You've seen me use this before. It's got a very fine tip, and I've got my egg cup full of water, and I've also got handy my very fine tip 0.05 Staedtler black pigment fine liner, because what you'll find is, even with a tiny brush, you can't help going over some of these lines a little bit. So when the paint's dry, and it takes very little time to dry because we're working almost dry, we don't use a lot of water, it's quite good if you've gone over just to reapply this over the black lines. So the trick is, with these paints, because our colouring books aren't watercolour paper, the trick is to work as dry as possible with them. Joanna's pages they're not card, but they're quite thick. So they will take a little bit of water, but we absolutely cannot use too much water, because we will warp those pages. So I've got my tiny brush, and the trick is to literally just put it in the water. So I've got my egg cup full of water off screen here. Literally just put it in the water, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to wet this apple green with just a few drops, and I'm not using a water pen because I think they're too difficult to control. So I'm literally just wetting the surface very slightly like that, and I'm twisting my brush in there because that'll start to thicken the paint. If you just put water on these and then use them straight away, you won't get the depth of pigment. We need to leave them around about 30 to 60 seconds for the paint to really thicken up, and that way you'll get a nice thick even coat, and you probably won't have to go back and do a second coat. So now I'm just going to clean my brush off, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to prep the moss green. So I've got a clean brush, I just wiped it in my water. So I'm just going to literally just wet the top of it very slightly. And again, just swirl the paint around a little bit so that it starts to thicken up. And now, while that's just finishing off, I'm going to make sure that I get the leaf in shot that I want you to show you to do. Okay, so again, I'm just going to clean my brush off, although I am going to be using this colour actually. I'm going to be using the dark colour first, so I won't need to clean my brush actually thinking about it. So you can see that I'm just continuously putting very little water on and just swirling it around to really thicken it up. Okay, so let's put these out the way. So I'm going to be working on this leaf here. So let me see if I can zoom you in a little bit. How does that look? Let me have a look, see if you can see. I'm going to be working on this one here. Yep, I think that's fine. Okay, so I'm actually going to put my paints above me so that they're easier to reach with my little egg cup. So I'm going to go to my moss green, the darkest green. And they're a little bit, the way I'm going to use these today is a little bit different to normal watercolours, because normal watercolours, A, you would use a lot of water, but B, you would tend to start with lighter colours and work up the dark shades. These you can, for all their watercolour paints, I'm using them slightly differently. So I've got my brush nice and saturated in that now thickened paint. And all I'm going to do is, I'm going to kind of almost cut this leaf in half. So I'm going to have the bottom half in the deep green with the moss green, and then the top half in the apple green. So I'm just going to, and I'm going to kind of follow the pattern of the leaf. So I'm going to kind of make a little almost triangle shape. So keep the point in that direction. And just apply straight to the paper. And I'm just going to take it down and just be careful of these edges. But as I say, we've got our black pigment fine liner. So you should be all right. The only thing that you probably won't see is while I'm painting, you won't see what I can see. You won't see how bright they are, because they're not catching the light. But for the purposes of the tutorial, it doesn't really matter, because what you're going to watch is the technique, not the finished effect. So I've got that paint nice and thick, and it's almost dry. Because this brush is so tiny, it picks up very little water. And the paint that I am picking up is nice and even and thick. So I'm just going to paint. So bear with me while I paint up to the edges of the, I think it's a daisy that's next to it. And this is why I think even with larger spaces, it's still good to have a tiny brush, because A, it helps you with how much water you can pick up, i.e. not very much, and B, it just enables you to get right in to the very, very small detail around some of these flower shapes. Just finishing off this last little bit. And thank you so much for all the lovely feedback you gave me on that double page. I kind of set myself a bit of a challenge with that, and it took 4 full afternoons of painting in the garden. But I think it was really worthwhile. And I actually sent the image to Coliro in Germany. I sent it to their marketing team, and they want to put the image on their Instagram page. So I wrote a little letter off to Joanna. She's thrilled, graciously said yes. So if you find the Coliro Instagram page, hopefully the marketing team will be uploading this fairly shortly. So I've just cleaned my brush because I'm going to go to the lighter colour now. So I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of water, and remember we already thickened this up previously, so it's good to go. And we're just going to start from the top. Right into the tip there with this apple green. And another good tip is, when you're blending, can you see these colours that I've got in front of me? Yes, you can see the greens. So to blend 2 colours together, try and pick colours in the same palette that are kind of 1 or 2 tones apart. So can you see I've got this middle green here? But the reason I'm not using it is because it's a little too close to that one and to that one in shade. And I tried blending with all of the greens, but the closer they are in tone together, the less effect you will get on the page. So if you're picking 2 colours to blend together, kind of pick a dark one and a light one rather than a mid, and then you'll get the effect even more. So again, I'm just picking up that nice thick paint with very, very little water. And I'm just going to work my way down to almost where the dark green is, and then I'll show you where the magic starts. So like I say, you wouldn't blend normal watercolours like this, but having used these quite a lot now, this is my own preferred technique on blending them. And remember, this line here will still be a little bit wet, which is what you want, because to blend them, both of the colours have to be slightly damp. If you left the dark green to dry completely, you'd really struggle to blend it. So you need to blend while both colours are wet. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that lighter colour, the apple green, over the moss green. And then I'll show you what we do next to get rid of that line. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my brush completely. And I've got a little cloth at the side of me, so I'm just wiping off that excess water just to make sure that it's totally clean. Then I'm going to dip my clean brush into the water. So all I've got is clear water on the tip of my brush. And then I'm just going to do little tiny marks like that. And the more we do this with a clean brush, the more the colours will meld together. Again, I'm going to clean it off, dry it so that I've got no remnants of the paint left, dip it in my water, clean water. Again, very little water, very little water. And I'm just dotting and dabbing. So I'm not swirling because I don't want to mix the paint up completely. I'm just dabbing it with the very tip of my brush so that one colour literally starts to melt into the other. And there must be a lot of techniques on how to do this, but this is how I did the blending on the double pages that you saw earlier. Clean my brush. Oh, and can you see I've got a big drop of water there? So I'm just going to put my finger on that so it doesn't drop on the page. It's just almost, it's not stippling, but it's kind of like feathering it almost. So you're almost kind of like creating a feathering effect with the end of your brush. And just do this as many times as it takes to really make those two colours disappear into each other. But keeping it as dry as you possibly can. See, I've got another little drip there, so I'm just going to take my finger and run that off. And that is basically it. And that will dry in roughly, well, I'm indoors, so roughly about 60 seconds. If I was outside, it would dry a lot quicker. It would dry in about 30 seconds. I had a near disaster when I was painting outside on my double pages. I had a tiny little fly. This was, I don't think it was this leaf, but one of the leaves was semi-wet, and I had a little tiny green fly into it and get stuck in the paint. So I had a rescue operation, but luckily the green fly lived and I didn't smudge my page, thankfully. So you can see that that's blended up. That's blended up quite well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean my brush off again. And the outside of this is now dry enough for me to go over it with a fine liner. And I've been quite careful, so I don't really need to. Let me just... Yes, it is working. I thought it was when I tried it before. I'm just going to... I've just gone over slightly there. And this just gives you back your really sharp black lines. Now the last tip that I'm going to give you before we finish is, if you've painted this leaf, don't start on this flower next. Start on this flower next, or somewhere else. Simply because, give this time to dry properly. If I was to start painting this in reds, and this line at the bottom where the dark green is wasn't quite dry, I can end up with, if I take the red right up to the line, I could probably end up with a little bit of bleeding across both colours. So just make sure that when you're doing pieces of the design that are next to each other, if you've already painted one of them, make sure it's properly dry first. You can tell I've done that by trial and error, can't you? So that's it for today. I hope you found that really useful. I certainly love these paints to bits, and I hope you enjoy using them. Bye for now, everybody.